I don't exactly like what I read that other people say, and most of the time I'll go to Wikipedia because they do try their best to be formidable with all the information that they would put before you, even if they are by people long ago, disknowledgeable people in the old days who might have tagged and titled things in a way that we would disagree with. And yes, some of these things can really tick you off. It really did me to a degree whenever I read it, but I just had to remember and remind you guys likewise that it is people of the old days that were disknowledgeable about things, right? But tags and titles came about in one way long ago, and they were not actually made by us, these terms. Paganism, they were actually put forward by people within the Christian pathways. Alright, so let's read a little bit within Wikipedia about what pagan and paganism is and what they define it as, and then we'll talk about it from there. Paganism in classical Latin paganus, rural, rustic, and later civilian, is a term first used in the 4th century by early Christians for people in the Roman Empire who practiced polytheism. This was either because they were increasingly rural and provincial relative to the Christian population, or because they were not milites Christi, soldiers of Christ. Alternate terms in Christian texts for the same group were Hellene, Gentile, and heathen. Ritual sacrifice was an integral part of ancient Greco-Roman religion and was regarded as an indication of whether a person was pagan or Christian. Paganism was originally a pejorative or derogatory term for polytheism, implying its inferiority. Paganism was broadly connotated the religion of the peasantry. During and after the Middle Ages, the term paganism was applied to any non-Abrahamic, unfamiliar religion, and the term presumed a belief in false god. Most modern pagan religions existing today, modern paganism or neo-paganism, express a worldview that is pantheistic, polytheistic, or animistic, but some are monotheistic. The origin of the application of the term pagan to polytheism is debated. In the 19th century, paganism was adopted as a self-descriptor by Yanism. Okay, so basically they're just saying where the terms came from in the earlier part, but not so much as to the term pagan itself yet, and we'll go there right now. It is crucial to stress right from the start that until the 20th century, people did not call themselves pagans to describe the religion they practiced. The notion of paganism, as it is generally understood today, was created by the early Christian church. Okay, so that is really necessary to understand right there, that we did not tag and title ourselves, as I said in the beginning making of this video, I believe. If I didn't, I intended to. It was a label that Christians applied to others, one of the antitheses that were central to the process of Christian self-definition. As such, throughout history, it was generally used in a derogatory sense. Owen Davies, Paganism, a very short introduction made in 2011. The term pagan is derived from late Latin paganus, revived during the Renaissance, itself deriving from classical Latin paganus, which originally meant religion delimited by markers. Paganus had also come to mean of or relating to the countryside, country dweller, villager, by extension, rustic, unlearned, yokel, bumpkin, in Roman military jargon, non-combatant, civilian, unskilled soldier. It is related to pangere, to fasten, to affix, and ultimately comes from Proto-Indo-European, pag / to fix in the same sense. And you know, you don't really have to know all of that last part, just basically that, you know, they began titling us and tagging us as these terms. Not really something I like, to tell you the truth, but it is in the old days people of disknowledge and ignorance that would create these terms and, you know, like to look at us in ways that would be below them. Of course, the holy wars were raging at those points in time very extensively. Let's see. The adoption of paganism by the Latin Christians as an all-embracing pejorative term for polytheist represents an unforeseen and singularly long-lasting victory within a religious group of a word of Latin slang originally devoid of religious meaning. The evolution occurred only in the Latin West and in connection with the Latin Church. Elsewhere, Hellenic or Gentile, ethnikos, remained the word for pagan, and paganism continued as a purely secular term with overtones of the inferior and the commonplace. Medieval writers often assumed that paganism as a religious term was a result of the conversion patterns during the Christianizations of Europe, where people in towns and cities were converted more readily than those in remote regions where old ways lingered. However, this idea has multiple problems. First, the word's usage as a reference to non-Christians predates that period in history. Second, paganism within the Roman Empire centered on cities. The concept of an urban Christianity as opposed to a rural paganism would not have occurred to Romans during early Christianity. Third, unlike words such as rusticatus, paganism had not yet fully acquired the meanings of uncultured backwardness used to explain why it would have been applied to pagans. Pagans more likely acquired its meaning in Christian nomenclature via Roman military jargon. Early Christians adopted military motifs and saw themselves as milites Christi, soldiers of Christ. A good example of Christians still using paganism in a military context rather than religious. Now, paganism had already acquired its religious connotations by the mid-4th century. And as early as the 5th century, paganism was metaphorically used to denote persons outside of the bounds of the Christian community. Following the sack of Rome by the Visigoths just over 15 years after the Christian persecution of paganism under Theodosius I, murmurs began to spread that the old gods had taken greater care of the city than the Christian God. In response, Augustine of Hippo wrote De Civitate de Contra Paganos, the city of God against the pagans. In it, he contrasted the fallen city of man to the city of God, of which all Christians were ultimately citizens. Hence, the foreign invaders were not of the city or rural. The term pagan is not attested in the English language until the 17th century. In addition to infidel, the heretic, it was used as one of the several pejorative Christian counterparts to Gentile, as used in Judaism. Now let's see if they sum it up within what they call the definition here on Wikipedia. If such a creature exists, if they can condense it down by what we're looking at here as a mechanical, I guess for lack of better terms, a mechanical way of putting things, maybe an agnostic way of looking at things, or a Christianized way of looking at the definition of pagan or paganism, right? Okay, the definition here says, it is perhaps misleading even to say that there was such a religion as paganism at the beginning of what is called the Common Era. It might be less confusing to say that the pagans before their competition with Christianity had no religion at all, in the sense in which that word is normally used today. They had no tradition of discourse about ritual or religious matters, apart from philosophical debate or antiquarian treatise, no organized system of belief to which they were asked to commit themselves, no authority structure peculiar to this religious era, above all, no commitment to a particular group of people or set of ideas other than their family and political context. If this is the right view of pagan life, it follows that we should look on paganism quite simply as a religion invented in the course of the 2nd to 3rd centuries AD, in competition and interaction with Christians, Jews, and others. Paganism is an umbrella term for all the many different pathways that would be shaded beneath it. That would be witchcraft, Wicca, shamanism, Druidism, Buddhism, Shintoism, and many, many others. Religions that are of the ideas or concepts of pantheism, polytheism, monotheism, as well as animism. And it doesn't have to be a negative thing. We don't have to adopt the negative things that other people would say about us in the past in writings or today. We are a strong and vibrant people, open-minded and ever-changing, and that's what we should be. Yes, we adopted the term paganism from what the Christians had called us. We were called pagans by those of other religions in the Christian pathways. And yes, it was said that it means all kinds of negative. But as of today, throughout time, it grew to be a term that means people of the earth. Paganism is an umbrella term for the many, many different pathways that would be shaded beneath it. Religions such as Buddhism, Shintoism, Santeria, Shamanism, Druidism, Witchcraft, Wicca, so many I don't even care to name anymore. Religions that can be polytheistic, pantheistic, animistic, open-minded, and free-flowing. That's what I like to think about it. There are a lot of negative terms that people might place on it, things that they would like to say about it. After all, the term pagan or paganism was actually brought about by those within the Christian pathways. We were tagged and titled by them, and yes, we adopted those terms and made them our own, but in a positive manner. And under positive light, we've grown in such a way that other people, their views has changed about us. Yes, we're people of the earth and of the countryside, but we are not disknowledgeable. We're not, what was the terms that they had said about it? We're not bumpkins or yokels or anything of that nature. Medicine had to come from somewhere. And the knowledge of that medicine started with us. This has been Lady Leeanna, and I hope that you've enjoyed this edition of Eclectic Spirituality, Witchcraft Wicca, and that you'll tune in again. Please support me on Patreon. There you can find me as Lady Leeanna.